All right, welcome to this edition of Michael's Record Collection. I'm joined today by a collective of musicians that are part of a new project called Eternal Return. You have a new album, Once Only, on New Dog Records. I am joined by Paul Godwin, Robert, I'm sorry in advance if I mess up your last name, Jürjendal.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. And Miguel Noya. And you guys are
Pretty
all
good.
in different countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other two members, the other members of the band that are not here, also in other countries. 5 members of the band, 5 different countries. I know the legend has it, if the internet is to be believed, Paul, that you and Miguel met at Berklee School of Music, but how did your collective come together to form this new band, Eternal Return?
I think Paul has the answer for that.
I'll jump on that.
Yeah.
I'll try for that. So Miguel and I met in the front row of the King Crimson concert in 1981, the Reformed Discipline tour, and I believe its first show in the US in Boston. We discovered we were both students at Berklee. Sorry, Miguel?
No, it was the first concert of the tour.
Okay. There you go. And we worked for 35 years. We've been working as Dogon. In 2015, did I get that right, Miguel? 16.
16.
We were invited to participate in an ambient music festival, if you can believe that exists. There's an amazing one called Kukimuru in Estonia. And we asked our friend David Rothenberg who would be a good musician to collaborate with if we were going to Estonia. And he recommended Robert, who also had roots in King Crimson and Fripp philosophy and playing. And so we invited Robert to collaborate with us on the concert at the festival. And it was a very good fit and collaboration. And then subsequently, we started to record together remotely. And then Miguel and Robert did a beautiful record together about the remote collaboration in a way called Power of Distance, which came out in last year, 2019. Then we discovered that Robert had been playing with Colin Edwin, the bass player formerly of Porcupine Tree. And they've done record together, and we really enjoyed that. And so Miguel was, as you might have read, is a nomad, both politically, economically, artistically. He's living away from his country of Venezuela. And so I think we got the idea, let's form a band. Let's get Colin, and then let's work with Miguel Toro, another Venezuelan expat living in Berlin. Let's get the band together and book a studio in Berlin, and let's find these kind of creative, progressive and ambient oriented musicians, and let's put them all together in a studio and see what we can get.
Now, it's interesting that Colin Edwin, to hear him doing this type of music, because Porcupine Tree, 180 degrees different from this, and so I kind of enjoyed just listening for his bass parts. When I listened to the new album, I wanted to hear what am I hearing anything, any musical DNA that I recognize? Obviously, the music is so different that there wasn't any similar sort of DNA to what he does in Porcupine Tree. But tell me about the challenges of coming together, all of you, and writing this and recording this, and especially, I think, did you do some or all of the work before the pandemic?
It was all done, in 2019. Help me.
2019. It was August and October 2019, before the outbreak.
And you guys had
So maybe
you met
Robert,
in Germany.
We did. I thought maybe Robert, you want to speak a little bit about maybe Michael's question about Colin's playing, and also his question about the difference in styles, or how we created maybe.
Yeah. What depends of Colin's style. It's very wide, and he's really very sensitive musician, because he, besides Porcupine Tree stuff, he has quite many kind of other projects. Let's say not so famous, but say are very much based on improvisation, like X-Wise Heads, I think. There's a legendary flute player and sax player. This is Jeff Lee. I think he worked also his, let's say, don't remember the legendary band, British, but it was, I mean, a lot of improvisation and kind of structures which were not familiar for Porcupine Tree at all. And I know he plays also jazz, like double bass. He can go out and play in the evening jazz stuff. So I think he's a really very good musician. And when we started our album, it was, then I recognized that he's also a very good programmer. He's able to program all percussion stuff, and very well, very human way. I mean, a very good touch, and so many things. And he's just, and like a person, he's very sweet, very nice to work with him. So it's very easy. He's from Australia actually, so it's kind of, we have so many branches in this band.
Yeah, I've forgotten to put Australia in the. I always forget these.
We have,
I know, and we have someone from Portugal now.
Yeah, so we cover almost the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly international. It must make for you know, a lot of emailing, Dropboxing files to each other, that kind of thing. Can you kind of walk me through how you composed, how you know, kind of got the music together before you went in to record it?
Well, I basically, we knew that, or Miguel can talk about this actually, but I'll just say quickly that we knew the intention, and there's some references, you know, in the promotional materials we mention being influenced by some of the solo work of David Sylvian, and also like Rain Tree Crow, which I never mentioned, but when Sylvian created a group after Japan. And then also, I think we all agreed in advance that we were influenced and enjoyed very much the late period of Talk Talk, the records like Spirit of Eden and Color of Spring, where Talk Talk began to explore a kind of jazzy ambient, but with vocals. I think we all agreed on that. But Miguel can talk about the music and how it came about. And it really came about very late, right before we entered the studio. And we intended that somewhat. Miguel?
Yes, thank you, Paul. When Paul mentioned me the fact that he wanted to produce a record in Germany, first in Berlin, for some reasons I said like, okay, so we started sharing some ideas. So we wrote a little bit of one piece and a little bit of the other one. We were kind of like casting what was possible to play. And of course we knew Robert and Miguel Toro, but we have never before done anything with Colin Edwin. But I expected to be like, okay, this is quite interesting. So when we arrived to Berlin, we had some small ideas. Some pieces were kind of like, okay, like the Sky and Nomad were kind of like the rough skeletons were designed already. So they were actually finished. The structure and the form of the pieces were finished after we did the first recording session. when we tried things on the band. And there was this idea of the talk, of course, and the Sylvian influence. I think that was major on the vocal part of Paul, I would say. But again, working with Robert, that was natural. It was really organic. And the first session with Colin was like, oh, this is gonna work, because we entered the studio without having like explained to the musicians what we were looking for, but just showing up small ideas. And the music came out as a total collaboration, I would say. There was not points about doing, writing the bass or the guitar, because we trusted so much what was gonna come. And in the end, as I say, or we say, Paul and I would say, we share a muse, and the muse show up in the studio. And then things flew, they were fluent. We ended up mixing the record according to some suggestions by Colin that was kind of like brilliant ideas, that like, oh, we should mix this in London. I have these friends. They have a studio in a boat. So it ended up being a really fluent, I would say like a really smooth project, where things were played live. And that's quite interesting, because, when you're programming computers, you tend to overwork and stuff. And then there's like maybe you lose the touch of the nature of the original music.
We've all been, especially Robert, and he can maybe talk about this, but we've all been trading tracks over the internet, and many of his collaborative albums, I think, were done that way. And we kind of were trying to not get into that during this process. But Robert, did you want to?
Oh yeah, I think we were really lucky to make it, because soon after that it's a lockdown came. So not so. Yeah, it's just quite there, close to the recording. So actually, for me, it was the last studio session, like a big one, really. All other stuff is just through the internet, which I'm done. Many things, but no, like person to person, face to face, no, just the internet. So yeah, it's both ways are okay, but I think I still if there's a possibility to work like in a real studio with guys, and in the process, I prefer this much more, of course. And I remember this kind of really nice moments when we started just to improvise. It was so nice how Paul guided us. So it's just what to do. Just very, very slightly. He walked to Colin was in another room, actually. We didn't see each other. This was also very strange, but I liked it the way. And Paul went to Colin and a little bit explained what to do, not much, a little bit, just a structure. And then he came to me and also said a little bit explanation. And then just to start it. And yeah, I think we tried, we made just some takes and it was there. And kind of really magical. Yeah.
It was a trio in the main room, and then the two of us, the guitar and the piano keyboards on another room. So it was like a quintet splitting by two.
Yeah. You couldn't see the way the studio is booked, is set up. I want to say that Miguel and I, and myself as a producer, always chose the method of producing where you choose the proper musicians and then you give them as much leeway as possible for them to make their personal statement, rather than the type of arranger, composer, or producer that's going to really specify exactly what parts they want played. And it's not because we couldn't. You know, some of this music was all written out and printed out. But it was really because we want that contribution, we want that creative contribution, and we want to feel the way that the different players will influence each other in the moment. You know, what's going to come out from that fusion and the gestalt of what occurs. Yeah.
When you met in Germany, was the first time you'd all five been in the same place at the same time?
Yep.
That's I mean, kind of incredible. Did any of the tracks sort of change, you know, once you got in the studio? Were there ideas that, you know, now that you're kind of together, even though you were split into two rooms, were there situations where something just felt a little off and you changed it a little bit, or were they pretty much what you had already decided in advance?
It's a good one.
I would say.
Go ahead, Miguel.
I would say that even though we have some basic ideas to play around, everything came out really fast and easy. Like if we had some arpeggios on the piano, that was a reference to start the piece, for instance. But there was not too much of a going deep because everyone got it really like a first take, 2 takes, 3 takes, and that's it. And all the takes were lives. That means that once one take was over, we did another one, but rather instead of changing one instrument or anything like that. In the case, there is a specific case, which is a trumpet in the boy that came afterwards.
Yeah.
And then he had freedom to perform, but he needed a lot of guidance because the sound that Paul and I had in mind was really specific, and he couldn't say like, oh, you know. So we ended up giving him some technical suggestions, but he played by himself. And then, of course, in the production, the final production, that says like, okay, there's 2 notes here that are, you know, these 2 notes are not necessary. So it ended up being that's the only one that has had some external production, but he was free to play whatever he was playing, and then we will guide him to something more close to what we had in mind. But the rest of the band was working, you know, as a band. So the guest is the trumpet player in this case, plays only one song. Everything came out like naturally, I would say.
Yeah, but to Michael's question about whether something that we imagined or wrote beforehand and whether it changed in the studio, I guess I could say that, for example, there's a piece, the 5th piece, the 4th piece called The Triggering Town. And Miguel and I had recorded and released that on a Dogon record previously. It was mostly piano, vocal with very light synthesis. And so in this case, we felt like we wanted to hear it for this ensemble and see what happened to it. And so some things that happened were that we did a long improvisation related to, but not specific to, The Triggering Town. And that piece really just developed organically in the studio. And it was a separate piece, but then, you know, after, when we're listening to all the rough mixes and so forth, we started to realize we could create a kind of suite. So in fact, pieces 3, 4, and 5 on the album are really part of a trilogy, a suite. And so one is this long improv that happened before, that's called A Medium-Sized Village. And then The Triggering Town itself proper. And then following that became The Bottom of the Pond, which is this kind of quite post-rock sort of intense answer in a way to The Triggering Town. So those things, both those envelope pieces on either side of The Triggering Town were not planned at all before the studio. So that's one answer.
Tell me a little bit about this theme of nomadism and sort of how it influenced your work on this record.
Miguel.
I've been having a nomadic state of existence since 2013, but mostly from 2016, when we came to Europe for the first time together, Paul and I. I think it was 2016, yes. So I've been living like most like the last year when we started the record, like I came to Spain to give a workshop on July 2019, and then I stayed for the record, and then I never came back to the country, to Venezuela. It's impossible to return for me for now. So I would say that the nomadic state is not easy. So I guess there is a charge, a really emotional, strong, spiritual charge inside me that for some reason touches Paul too. So I will say that he says that the record is influenced by this state of nomadic state. And it's interesting, we have been talking about it a lot. So, and that's the first song, which is I think that was the first idea we worked together, Nomad, the song.
So I would say, thank you. I would say that we hear different versions of nomadism. You hear a lot about digital nomads and people who are economically safe, but they're voluntarily choosing to live in different places all the time. And, you know, as a function of internet work and so forth. Mm-hmm. That's great. And then we know, of course, the refugee stories from all over the globe, people forced out of their countries looking for a better life, etc. But I think that Miguel's situation is somewhat unique in that he is an artist. That's his livelihood. And he is from a country that suffered a collapse. And so he is kind of a voluntary nomadic artist. So yeah. That might be more unusual.
Yeah, and actually I'm very lucky because I've been having these collaborations that is taking me to different countries. So when they ask me like, where are you living now? It's like, well, I'm living here because I'm in this project. So for now, like for instance, I'm in Berlin now. So by the way, Miguel is busy doing, he's working with a theater group. So he was not going to be able to be really like at this time because we are working together in Berlin. But before that, Paul and I got together in the United States last year. And yeah, at the end of the year, like October, something like that. And then I went and did a project with my brother. And so I'm moving according to what the art is driving me to. And that's interesting, but it's also quite lately, I consider myself kind of like Jack Kerouac or something like that. Just a joke for myself, you know, to keep me to keep on going, because it's not easy, and especially in a pandemic situation where before that was fun, but now it's it's complicated because I went to England in December and I spent like 3 weeks locked in a place. So I didn't go to England. I went to a room in England.
Say about your children, though.
I was supposed to meet my children. I couldn't.
So Miguel has three
children in England.
All in England, and his sister in England, and he couldn't meet with any of them, and he was there for a month over Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's unfortunately a lot of that going on.
Yeah. Yeah, but there was some art. So in the end, I met with some people like the day before I left. I could meet some people, and then we discussed a little bit of the goals I had in mind for artistic collaborations there.
So it wasn't a complete waste.
No, there's never a waste. You know, your life, there's any single moment that you're breathing, it has a value.
That's very true.
I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. You have to keep on going.
What is it about, or what particular challenges does does this type of music create for a musician that maybe other types of, like rock and roll or whatever, maybe don't have? You guys all have a sort of a background in you mentioned King Crimson, but even King Crimson, the atmospheric ambient post rock, whatever you want to call it. I get distracted by labels, but that's only a part of what they do. What, does this type of music have challenges that other types don't have for you as an artist?
Robert.
Yeah, yeah. I'm considering this album. I have been thinking a lot about shamanism, really.
Shamanism.
Because shamanism, yeah, because Sarah, it's like going through this album. You recognize in some places it kind of very odd culture coming in, which is not so much Western at all. For this region, for Estonia, it's maybe more familiar because Finland, they have this shamanism in the north more, and of course east in Siberia. And Miguel, I guess also South American things. It's more common there, I guess.
Yes,
I'm not sure about. I'm not so much sure about the North America. But this is something which is not so common for British Baroque stuff, because they are more like a kind of intellectual, let's say. Yeah, but the shamanism is not for me, actually. It's not intellectual, but it's a kind of traveling with your mind somewhere, who knows where, and building something which creating something which is really there. Hard to say. I mean,
is it just more? Is it more about a mood or a feeling than it is about notes and rhythms?
Yeah, but the fact is that it disappears. And somewhere it is in the album, and then it disappears, and then comes back there and back. And this is funny, I think, because it's not just one thing, but you understand it if you're listening. That there's something different if you compare with other groups. And this is phenomenal for me, and I like this. It's kind of something new, fresh.
I like what you're saying, Robert, about shamanism, because that's actually one of the trends. And Paul also has this interest in the shamanic way of connecting with nature, connecting with your heart rather than your brain. That's the point. And shamanism is also, of course, in Siberia, but there's also in North America, and there's in South America a lot, and in England, because there is this, in UK, because there is this Druid stuff, which is the Celtic. They're into magic too, and that's my blood. My blood is a mix of Venezuelan and Galician. It's Celtic.
Yes, I think to add that perhaps though Crimson has come up, we're in a way, a project like this is more influenced by something like Fripp and Eno collaboration, solo albums, or things like Gong, or Steve Hillage, or Robert Wyatt, which we've never mentioned, but these ideas of creating a textural foundation, and building some melodic ideas or vocal ideas or lyrical ideas on top of, or the ensemble interacting with lyrical, melodic, or vocal ideas. So I think it's a different animal than your classic progressive rock, which has to be written out. And, the band has to know that they're going to change into 11/8 on bar 37. I mean, they have to know that. You can't, there's no accidents going to occur like that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, as a composer, what do you want the listener to take away from this album when they get done with the listening experience?
I think that's good because it allows me to bring back to the shamanism that these guys were talking about. And I didn't mean to just ignore that. I think that the role of a shaman is to hold the space for an individual to have a transformation. And so in this essence, we're creating sonic spaces and with some lyrical pointers for the listener to have some kind of transformation. Maybe introspection, I think, is quite important in the process, that there's something about the music that allows a listener, I hope, to look inward a little bit and take that time and experience maybe some emotional currents. I think there's a lot of emotion on the record that's very subtle, and by listening, one can experience something there.
The album is called Once Only. It's on New Dog Records. Is this already out? I wasn't clear on the release I received. Has it already been released?
This week, just two days ago.
Okay. So you can get it now at Amazon, all the usual spots?
It's out there. We're at Bandcamp and we're at Burning Shed, which is worldwide distribution from the UK, but keeping really good company with Tim Bowness and a lot of progressive rock and stuff like that. And also now we're on Spotify and Apple Music, so you can stream it everywhere.
Great. All right. The album again is called Once Only. The band's name is Eternal Return. Robert, Paul, Miguel, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Wish you the best of luck with this release.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.